Here is the best hook tailored specifically for a US audience, designed to stop the scroll, validate their struggle with the hustle culture, and immediately position the math as the ultimate cheat code they have been missing. Stop scrolling. If you have $10,000 to your name, you're standing on a gold mine and you don't even know it. We are obsessed with the hustle in this country, grinding 80 hours a week, side hustling until you drop, all trying to turn that 10 grand into 100. But what if I told you the hustle is the trap? The math that I'm about to share with you proves that you don't need a raise, you don't need a second job, and you don't need a miracle. You just need to understand the invisible, exponential force that turns a seed into a forest. Today, we are cracking the code on the math that takes you from $10,000 to $100,000, and it is going to change how you see every dollar you ever earn. Welcome, everyone. Please take your seats and get comfortable, because we are about to go on a journey today that fundamentally alters the way you view your wallet, your bank account, and your future. We're talking about the leap from $10,000 to $100,000. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. You might look at that title, $10,000 to $100,000, and think, okay, another speech about saving money or clipping coupons, but I promise you this is not that. This is not about deprivation. This is not about working yourself to the bone. This is about the math. The title says the math that will blow your mind. And I intend to keep that promise because the mathematics of growth, when you truly look them in the eye, are terrifying, they are beautiful, and they are available to you right now. We need to start by understanding the psychological weight of these two numbers, $10,000 and $100,000. To most people, $10,000 is a car, is a safety net, is a vacation. It is a nice, round, achievable number. $100,000, on the other hand, feels like a different planet. It feels like real money. It feels like the threshold where investing actually starts to matter. The gap between them feels massive. It feels like a chasm that requires a lifetime of labor to cross. But here is the first truth that will set the stage for everything else. The gap between $10,000 and $100,000 is not a distance of $90,000. That is the linear trap. That is the way a child looks at money. The gap between 10 and 100 is a multiplication by 10. It is a shift in magnitude. And once you understand that we are playing a game of multiplication, not addition, the entire game changes. Let's look at the trap that 99% of people fall into. I call it the arithmetic trap. Most people view financial growth as a straight line. They think, if I can save $10,000, then to get $100,000, I just need to do that 10 times. I need to work 10 times harder or work 10 years instead of one. This is linear thinking. It is slow, it is painful, and frankly, it is why most people never reach that six-figure milestone in their liquid assets. They're trying to dig a hole with a spoon, adding spoonful after spoonful of dirt, ignoring the fact that there's an excavator parked right next to them. That excavator is exponential growth. The math that blows your mind is the difference between an arithmetic progression, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a geometric progression, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. In the beginning, they look almost identical. But give it time, and the geometric line doesn't just go up, it goes vertical. We need to talk about the rule of 72. If you're not familiar with this, write it down because it is the compass for your financial life. The rule of 72 tells you how long it takes for your money to double based on the rate of return. You simply divide 72 by your interest rate. If you have your money in a standard savings account, which, let's be generous, offers you a 1% return, you divide 72 by 1. It takes 72 years for your money to double. If you start with $10,000, in 72 years, you have $20,000. In 144 years, you have $40,000. This is the arithmetic trap. You'll be dead before you get to $100,000. Now, let's shift the equation. Let's say you become a competent investor. Not a genius, just competent. You achieve a return of 8% annually, which is the historical average of the stock market over long periods. 72 divided by 8 equals 9. Your money doubles every 9 years. You start with $10,000. 9 years later, you have $20,000. 18 years in, $40,000. 27 years in, $80,000. By year 30, you have crossed the $100,000 threshold. So, just by changing the variable of where you put your money, you shrunk the timeline from never to a few decades. That's interesting, but that's not the math that blows your mind. That's just standard retirement planning. We are here to talk about speed. We are here to talk about going from $10,000 to $100,000 rapidly. To do that, we have to look at the formula for compound interest in a different light. The formula is P times 1 plus R to the power of T. P is your principal, your starting money. R is your rate. T is time. Most people obsess over P. They say, I need more principal. I need to start with $50,000. But if you only have $10,000, you can't change P right now. So the variable you must attack is R. Increasing your rate of return is the lever that moves the world. But before we talk about high-risk investments, we need to talk about the highest leverage investment you can make, which is in yourself. This is the math that people ignore because it is intangible. Let's say you have a skill set that pays you $20 an hour. That is your baseline. If you work more hours, you get paid more. That is arithmetic. But what if you invest 100 hours of your life? Let's say that's worth $2,000 in opportunity cost into learning a new skill like digital marketing, coding, or sales negotiation. You invest that time up front. You have spent the $10,000 of your energy. Now you apply that new skill. Suddenly, your market value isn't $20 an hour. It is $50 an hour. You haven't just added money. You have multiplied your earning capacity. If you take that extra $30 an hour and you invest it, you are now playing the game with a much larger P. This is the kinetic energy phase. The math from $10,000 to $100,000 is rarely just the money sitting in an account. It is the money flowing through a person who has increased their value. Let's get back to the hard numbers of scaling $10,000 into $100,000 through pure capital allocation, because this is where the mind-blowing part comes in. We need to look at the power of 1%. There is a concept in high-performance coaching called the aggregation of marginal gains. The idea is that if you improve in just 1% different areas, the cumulative effect is massive. If you start with $10,000 and you manage to increase your net worth by just 1% per week, not per year, per week, do you know what happens? The math is staggering. 1% is nothing. You can find a way to make 1% extra on a side hustle, or save 1% on your expenses, or get a 1% better return on a trade. 1%. After 1 week, you have $10,100. It looks like nothing, but let's run the tape. The formula for weekly compounding is powerful. If you earn 1% per week for 52 weeks, you don't end up with 52% more. You end up with a multiplier of 1.01 to the power of 52. Do you know what that equals? It equals 1.68. You have grown your wealth by 68% in a single year. Now stop and think about that. The stock market gives you 8 or 10% a year. A savvy side hustle or active trading strategy aiming for 1% a week gives you 68% a year. Let's run the timeline. You start with $10,000. Year 1, you're at roughly $16,800. Year 2, you apply the 1% weekly again. $16,800 turns into roughly $28,200. Year 3, you cross the $47,000 mark. Year 4, you are sitting at $79,000. And in year 5, if you maintain that conservative, boring, achievable 1% per week, your $10,000 has become $133,000. You have crossed the $100,000 threshold. The math that blows your mind here is that you didn't need a 1,000% return on a single lottery ticket. You didn't need to invent the next iPhone. You just needed to be 1% better every single week for 5 years. That is the power of consistent, compounding growth. It turns a mountain into a staircase. But we can go faster. We can push the envelope. Let's talk about the velocity of money. This is a concept that wealthy people understand intuitively, but poor people ignore. Velocity is how many times your money changes hands in a year to generate value. If you have $10,000 and you buy a piece of equipment, let's say a used truck and some tools to start a landscaping business, and that truck generates $20,000 of profit in a year, your money had a velocity of 2, and it returned 100% on investment. You take that original $10,000 and the $10,000 profit, and now you buy a second truck. Suddenly, your $10,000 seed is growing at a rate that Wall Street cannot touch because you're using your capital to build an engine, not just buying a lottery ticket. This leads us to the concept of asymmetry. The journey from $10,000 to $100,000 is best served by asymmetric bets. An asymmetric bet is one where your downside is capped, but your upside is unlimited. If you take $10,000 and put it into a certificate of deposit, your upside is capped at whatever the interest rate is, and your downside is 0 unless the bank fails. That is symmetric but boring. If you take $1,000 of your $10,000 and you invest it in learning a skill that allows you to create a software product, your downside is $1,000 and some time. But your upside could be selling that software for $100,000. That is an asymmetric bet. The math that blows your mind is that you only need a handful of these asymmetric wins to bridge the gap. Let's say you take your $10,000. You keep $5,000 safe. You take $5,000 and you allocate it into 10 $500 mini experiments. Maybe it's starting a niche website. Maybe it's flipping items on eBay. Maybe it's running a small ad campaign for a service you offer. Statistically, many of them will fail. Let's say 8 of them lose the $500. You are down $4,000. But let's say one of them breaks even and one of them explodes. That one winner takes that $500 and turns it into a $5,000 a month recurring income stream. Within 6 months, that single $500 bet has generated $30,000. You have lost $4,000 to make $30,000. That is a net gain of $26,000. You just grew your portfolio by 260% in half a year. This is the venture capital model applied to your life. You're not trying to bat 1,000. You're trying to hit one home run. Now, I want to talk about the psychological barrier that hits right around the $25,000 to $50,000 mark. It is called the dip. When you go from $0 to $10,000, it feels great because it's new. When you're going from $10,000 to $100,000, you'll hit a period where the math seems to slow down. This is the messy middle. You have made the easy wins. You've saved the money, you've made the first few investments, and now you are staring at the exponential curve. But it doesn't look like a curve yet. It looks like a flat line. This is where you must trust the math, not your eyes. The rule of 72 is a graph that looks like a hockey stick. For the first few years, it looks like nothing is happening. If you're compounding at 20%, a high but achievable rate for active investors or entrepreneurs, in the first year, you make $2,000. In the second year, you make $2,400. The difference is barely noticeable. People quit here. They say, "This isn't working," and they go back to their job. But if they stuck with it, by year 4, they're making over $4,000 a year in interest alone. Another aspect of this math is the psychology of number shock. When you have $10,000, losing $1,000 hurts. It's 10% of your net worth. When you have $100,000, losing $1,000 is a rounding error. It's 1%. This psychological shift allows you to take calculated risks that you couldn't take when you were poor. You can invest in a startup. You can buy a rental property in a different city. You can hold a stock through a downturn. The rich get richer not just because they have more money, but because they have a higher tolerance for risk because the risk represents a smaller percentage of their total life force. This is a mathematical advantage of being wealthy. You must simulate this mindset now. When you have your $10,000, do not treat it like it is your entire lifeblood. Treat it like P. Treat it like principle. It is a soldier you are sending into battle. If it dies, you mourn, but you know the army is coming. If it wins, it brings back prisoners of war. Detach emotionally from the $10,000 so you can apply the rationally correct math to grow it to $100,000. Let's look at a specific case study of the S-curve. All growth follows an S-curve. You start at the bottom, the learning phase. It's flat. You're learning to invest. You're learning to run a business. You're losing a little bit, making a little bit. This is the $10,000 to $20,000 phase. It is the hardest. Most people quit right here because it feels like work. But then you hit the inflection point. This is the middle of the S. The line goes vertical. Suddenly, everything you learn clicks. Your systems are running. Your investments compound. You shoot from $20,000 to $80,000 rapidly. Then you hit the saturation point at the top of the S. Growth slows again. You have maxed out that strategy. To get from $100,000 to $1 million, you have to jump to a new S-curve. But for our talk today, the journey from $10,000 to $100,000 is simply the process of finding your inflection point. The math that will blow your mind is how small the inflection point actually is. You don't need to change your life 100%. You need to change it 5%. If you take your $10,000 and you increase your savings rate by 5%, and you increase your income by 5% through a skill, and you increase your investment return by 5% through better allocation, the combined effect is multiplicative. It's not 5 plus 5 plus 5. It is a cascading wave of efficiency. I want to touch on the concept of geometric mean versus arithmetic mean. This is crucial for you to understand so you don't destroy your portfolio. If you invest $10,000 and make 50% one year, you have $15,000. The next year, you lose 50%. You are down to $7,500. The arithmetic average return is 0. You made 50, you lost 50. Average is 0. But you actually lost money. Your geometric mean is negative. This is why volatility is the enemy of wealth. As you go from $10,000 to $100,000, your number one job is not to seek the highest return. It is to seek the highest consistent return. A boring 12% every year will beat a wild up 50, down 40 strategy every single time. Over 10 years, a steady 12% turns $10,000 into $31,000. A volatile strategy with the same arithmetic average might leave you with $15,000 or less. The math of compounding demands stability. It demands that you avoid drawdowns at all costs. Never lose money. Rule number 1. If you lose 50%, you need a 100% gain just to get back to even. That is the math of recovery, and it is a killer. If you go from $10,000 to $5,000, you have lost 50%. To get back to $10,000, you need to make $5,000. That is a 100% return on your $5,000. It is twice as hard to recover as it was to fall. Protect the principal. Guard the $10,000 like a lioness guards her cub. It is the seed of the oak tree. So what is the blueprint? Let's summarize the math into a tactical plan. Phase 1. The accumulation of $10,000. You're likely here or close. This is done through labor. This is grinding. This is selling your time. Phase 2. The preservation. You lock the $10,000 away. You stop touching it. It is now capital. Phase 3. The acceleration to $100,000. You deploy that capital into 3 buckets. Bucket A is the safe bucket. Index funds, high-yield savings. This keeps you ahead of inflation. Let's say 50% goes here. $5,000. Bucket B is the growth bucket. Real estate, individual stocks, a side business. This is where you aim for that 10 to 15% return. Let's say 40% goes here. For $1,000. Bucket C is the moonshot bucket. Crypto, angel investing, highly speculative trades. This is where you look for the 10x. But you strictly limit this to 10%. $1,000. Now, let's simulate the math of this portfolio over 5 years. Bucket A, $5,000 growing at 5% turns into about $6,400. Bucket B, $4,000 growing at 15% turns into about $8,000. Bucket C, $1,000. This is the wild card. Let's say you make 4 bets of $250. 3 go to 0. 1 returns 10 times. $2,500. Total, $6,400 plus $8,000 plus $2,500 equals $16,900. Okay, that's not $100,000 yet. But remember, you aren't just investing the initial $10,000. You are also adding fresh capital from your job. Let's say you can add $500 a month to this portfolio. That's $6,000 a year. Over 5 years, that is $30,000 of fresh money. Add that to your $16,900 in gains, plus your principal, and you are approaching $60,000. We're getting close. To bridge the gap to $100,000, you have to increase the contributions or increase the rate in bucket B. This is where the math of skills comes back in. You use the time you have to increase your monthly contribution from $500 to $1,000. If you do that, the numbers explode. If you invest $1,000 a month, that is $60,000 in fresh capital over 5 years. Add the growth on that, and the growth on your original principal, and you cross $100,000 easily. The math that blows your mind is that the $100,000 is not just the result of the investment. It is the combination of high savings rate plus decent returns plus time. People obsess over the decent returns part, trying to find the perfect stock. They ignore the high savings rate, which is purely math and completely within their control. If you save $10,000 a year, it doesn't matter if the market is up or down, you are buying your way to $100,000 in a decade. The math guarantees it. The market doesn't have to cooperate for you to win if your savings rate is high enough. Let's finish with the concept of the slippery slope versus the greased chute. Most people view the path to wealth as a slippery slope they have to climb up with butter on their hands, constantly sliding back down. But once you understand the math, you realize it's a greased chute going down. Gravity is on your side. Compound interest is gravity. The more money you have, the harder it works. When you have $100,000, a 10% return is $10,000. That is more than many people save in a year. You have created a money employee that works as hard as you do, but never sleeps, never calls in sick, and never complains. Imagine this scenario. You're sitting at your desk. You have $10,000 in your account. You make the decision. You decide to stop treating it as money to spend and start treating it as an army to deploy. You allocate it. You automate the investments. You focus on your career to increase your contributions. You watch the dips in the market not as tragedies, but as discounts. You watch the years pass. Year 1 is slow. Year 2 is a little better. By year 5, you look at your balance, and it says $102,435.87. You did it. You didn't get lucky. You didn't win the lottery. You didn't invent Facebook. You simply respected the mathematics of reality. You understood that $10,000 to $100,000 is not a miracle. It is a mathematical inevitability given the right inputs. The inputs are time, rate of return, and capital contribution. Control what you can. Maximize the time by starting today. Maximize the capital contribution by living below your means and earning more. Maximize the rate of return by educating yourself and taking calculated risks. If you do these 3 things, the math has no choice but to work. The numbers are immutable. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Compound interest compounds. Wealth creates wealth. So, my challenge to you as you leave this room is not to go out and find $1 million idea. My challenge is to look at the $10,000 or whatever amount you have and see it as the seed. Respect the seed. Plant it in the right soil. Water it with consistent contributions. Protect it from the pests of inflation and taxes. And then simply wait. The math will blow your mind, not because it is magic, but because it is so relentlessly, predictably powerful. The journey from $10,000 to $100,000 is the journey from being a spectator of the economy to a master of it. It is the rite of passage to financial freedom. It all starts with the decision to let the math work for you, rather than against you. Go home, look at your numbers, do the math, and start the climb. The view from $100,000 is beautiful, and it is waiting for you. Thank you.